Thursday, it's 5, and we're live. Hi, I'm Joe Spina, and this is Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. And we have a new wrinkle, Paul.
Yeah, hey, Joe. Hey, for you folks back home, I mean, he practices that line in front of the mirror. You got to believe that, the way, I mean, he just like comes right out
I
with
didn't practice that.
But we do have a nice guest today.
Not
this
a
is
guest.
the first time you've had Darren Cyr on and me at the same time.
I always call him Darryl.
No, David, you call him.
I call him David?
Yeah.
I call him after his father?
So
I get the
my
D's all
wife
mixed up.
calls me.
But, folks, listen to this. We'll take your calls in a second. Our number here is, Paul, 781-780-9640. You're supposed to do that. I may have it wrong, by the way. It's right up there. It's 9460. See? 781-780-9460. And thank you, by the way, for your calls and your comments last week. They're instructive. But we're going to add a wrinkle to our show. Instead of it being Paul and Joe, I have to, make a markup.
My only question is, does that mean that you speak less or I speak less?
What was that again?
Who speaks less, you or me, as a result of having Darren here?
Whatever.
What do you mean,
Whoever,
whatever?
we have to battle it out.
Am I going to get in the middle of you two guys every time
No,
I'm on the show
but-
now?
A lot of my friends say to me, why don't you interrupt Joe? He's always talking.
Because I'm the guy that writes the show, folks. I'm the guy that has to do the flow. And the flow is that we're adding a new member to our team.
Yep.
And the reason being is that we want you folks, we talked about this, being interactive with the city, knowing what's happening. So he'll be here on Thursday nights live, talking about why they did what they did on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And then and give us a preview, give them a preview of what's coming up so they can interact. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's great.
This is called interactive TV. You got that?
We'll see how long he can last.
He's done pretty well. I got to get to business, folks.
Got through the first
I got to
5
listen to this. I got to put up with it. On this day, 115 years ago, Paul, Guglielmo Marconi, not Irish, transmitted the first transatlantic radio message from Cape Cod. The message from President Teddy Roosevelt to the King of England. And it was this: on behalf of the American people, most cordial greetings to you and all the people of the British Empire. That was over 115 years ago. That's when technology, imagine that?
That's kind of like the tweet of the time.
Yeah. He was the, I don't know, Steve Jobs at the time. Now, what happened this week? We had a birthday. Do you know about Martin Luther King, by the way? I got a few facts. Can we throw up Martin Luther King facts? There it is. Look at the first one, Paul. It says,
His name was Michael, not Martin.
no, but Garrett, you knew. So
I
tell
did
him.
know. Well, his father liked Martin Luther when he went over to England.
No, Germany.
Germany, I'm sorry, right.
Yeah. And he renamed himself and his son
Yep.
Martin,
Martin.
after Martin Luther.
Yep.
He graduated or went to college at age 15, Morehead College, which is a famous black college in Atlanta. And he graduated from Boston University.
Yep.
Playing with
And
Harry Aganis.
really, you think he could have been because he graduated in '55 and Harry was in the '50s, wasn't he?
Yep, mid-50s.
Who else was there from Fecto?
Becto, yep.
That must have been contemporaneous.
Another famous American from Lynn.
Right?
Yeah. Can you imagine that?
Fecto Larry School.
Yep, Fecto Larry. Yeah.
So,
Joe
folks,
Spina.
I mean, we break history here. Now, King was assassinated in 1968,
Yep.
and his mother was assassinated in church by a bullet in 1974. That's an oddity in itself, right? That's sad, too. And here's the interesting fact. George Washington and Martin Luther King are the only Americans who have a national holiday celebrated on their birthday. Huh? You like that, Paul, don't you?
I tend to disagree because in both cases, Washington and Martin Luther King, their birthday doesn't always fall on a Monday, so we don't actually celebrate it on their birthdays.
Whatever you want to say.
I'm splitting hairs.
See, he has to say that, folks, because he wants to show off. The frankly spelling, we'll see how sharp you are with the frankly B. Folks, get your pen and pencils out. I'm going to give you 3 questions. End of the show. Paul will give you the answers, or
Right.
No.
And let me just say that if you get the answers right, and I'll give you a bunch of hints, Joe's coming up with $30 scratch tickets as prizes, so you guys...
That's true, I am.
Wait a minute, we can't
Yes.
do that.
Oh, no, you're with
Oh,
the
the
lottery.
lottery.
Yeah.
No, but I'm gonna put them in a hat and they can draw. Or maybe we'll get something from Tony's Pub.
Okay.
Speaking of eateries, we'll get to that shortly. 4 state capitals, folks. 4 state capitals are named after presidents. Your trick is to name them. Number 2, which city was the capital of the Confederacy during the Civil War? And last, and this is a beauty, in terms of population, now listen carefully, in terms of population, the largest state capital is not the largest city by population in its respective state. Name that city. For
Oh,
example,
I know all the answers. Can I just do them?
No. And the show, we'll find out at the end of the show. Now, we're going to go to the eateries, by the way. Folks, let's get those eateries up there. I happen to go to Market Basket. He's bragging about it, talking to me about these rotaries and all the rest of it. So I forgot to get, I was coming to Lynn from wherever, and I wanted bacon. By the way, I got 4 things of bacon for $4.99 there. It's a hell of a price. Lo and behold, they have like restaurants there inside. Did you know that?
Yep.
Talk about, I got a tuna melt for $3.99. I couldn't believe it. It's a buy and a half.
So you're going to be going there all the time now?
I'm going to have you pay for it, though, for the $3.99. So what I want to
This is the
ask
only way
you
to get to
folks,
talk, Darren, is
and
you
our
have to
number
interrupt
here
him.
about eateries is, what's your favorite eatery? You know, whether it's Italian, whether it's Chinese, whether it's a sub.
Monty's District
Yeah,
45.
whatever. Give us a call.
Lux.
Tell
Ipswich
us.
fried clams at Tony's?
Oh, yes. Tony's
the
got
best.
that's but only
Friday
on
night.
the weekends, yeah.
Yep.
So let you folks tell us what you think of the great eateries in the city. We'll keep coming back to this.
Steak tips at the Sports Center.
You want
Did I
the good
say
news? You want the good news, Paul?
Chicken fingers, too.
The good news is crime is going down in the city of Lynn.
Yep.
You know what the bad news is?
Murders are up.
Yeah.
That's right. So what do you think about that? I mean, what stat is the one that we should talk about?
Probably the crime's down. And just telling you what a great job the Lynn police are doing. They're out there working. With the smaller numbers they have and the budget issues that we have, the police are doing a tremendous job. The murders that are taking place in the city, they're not really related, and it's unfortunate. You know, one of them was a road rage incident.
But
earlier.
the murders taking place, are they bad people shooting bad people? That's
Not
50-50,
necessarily.
random
I
now?
would say. Yeah,
Well, that kid, the delivery kid that got
road
killed,
rage.
yeah,
So it's mayhem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and an important thing to understand, you talk about like the statistics of overall crime going down. There's probably, I don't know what the number, thousands and thousands of instances of crimes committed, right? And if you have fewer crimes, obviously it goes down, but it doesn't move very much because the denominator is so big, right? Mm-hmm. With deaths, when you're talking about, like last year, let's say there were, I don't know the numbers, let's say last year there was 7, this year there's 10. It looks like there's almost a 50% increase in murders. But is that really a fair way to assess what's going on? When in the reverse would be true too. If there were 10 last year and there's 5 this year, I don't really think you can say that murders are down 50% because really, they're random to begin with, so you got to really take a longer period of time and kind of flatten it out.
But what do you think the people out there feel? How do you people feel about crime in the city of Lynn? Do you feel it's up, down, sideways, whatever? And frankly, I don't remember very many murders growing up in the city. We were not Chicago, let me put it that way.
Well, you got to look at, there are more people who carry guns, where when we were growing up, you get in a fight with someone, it was always a fist fight. Today, people settle their differences in such a different way. And
So you think there's an association between guns and increased murder rates?
no, I think that watching TV, the violence that's on TV, the violence that's in games, is more of a factor. And kids today, when they're growing up, they're not growing up with the same respect that we had for life. And when you're watching a series of Sopranos, you have a difference with someone, you go out and you kill them.
Wait a minute, The Sopranos happen to be about my people. Don't you get
It's
racist
one of my
on me.
favorite TV shows. It's just one of the first ones that came to.
Paul, you brought this point up at one time, and I'm going to throw it in your lap. All of these video games that I don't do, they're pretty violent. These kids grow up thinking that, you know, they're desensitized because they're killing.
Yeah, and it's not just that, too. I mean, social media, I think, has the effect of desensitizing. You know, if I'm having a conversation with Darren Cyr face-to-face on an issue that we both strenuously disagree with, the likelihood that we will be more civil exists when we're face-to-face looking at each other. When it's over the phone, I think it has it can be less civil. If it's an email or a text, it can be less civil even further.
Right.
And when people are doing texting all the time, and that's how they're all communicating, and then all of a sudden they have this encounter, you know, I think tensions can fly when they probably wouldn't have in an era without the text messaging and that social media stuff.
That's a great point, Paul. It really is. We're going to go off of this subject for. By the way, folks, you tell us whether you think or how you feel about crime, the crime rate in the city of Lynn. 781-780-9460. I want to spin off, if we can get up that opium wars, Pedro, because drug is the other issue that has to be taken care of, correct? You know, in other words, there's supposedly, and I don't know if it's true, but you can answer this better than I, is there an opioid crisis or epidemic in the city of Lynn?
Yes.
Major, and it's not
Right.
just here in Lynn. It's in the
Right.
state
Right.
and the whole country. It's everywhere.
And it no longer, well, I probably never did, but it certainly doesn't have a socioeconomic connection.
Okay.
It can be
acts over every social economic grouping.
Right.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I think everyone that we know has been affected by opioid, by people
one way or another. Yep.
dying, passing away, their kids, brothers, sisters.
Yep.
And as Paul just said, I mean, it could be a 15-year-old kid, it could be a 50-year-old guy.
Yep. We see it a lot. I won't say, you know, just opioid addiction, but there are substance use disorder issues with an ever-aging population. So we see it a lot in the work that we do at Cliffs.
We got about 3 minutes before we got to take a break, and I hope that we can get. Can you put up that graphic, Pedro, on, because it shows the opium wars, and it's a little bit of. I want to throw a little history because you folks are great history, but take a look at it. And that's a gorgeous looking thing, isn't it? I mean, you would never think that that beautiful plant can do the type of damage that you see what's at the bottom there, right? Now, though that is natural, that's heroin. Morphine, stuff like that. Those are natural. It's a little different. Now, if we can throw up fentanyl, take a look at that, and Paul, you can talk to the differences between opioids of that sort.
Well, that's a synthetic drug.
That's
fentanyl.
synthetic, right?
And it's mass-produced in China, right?
Right.
And shipped to the U.S. for distribution.
Through Mexico. It comes up from our southern border.
And our Democratic brethren prefer to keep it flowing. That's why they oppose a wall, right?
Perhaps.
So where's the moral high ground there?
Here is the point. Folks in the city of Lynn are struggling with opioids. The irony of it is, the graphic that went up there was not the graphic I was thinking of, but the opium wars began in 1818 when the British imposed opium onto the Chinese, right? And the Emperor of China resisted, and they went to war. We're going to take a break. We'll give you a little more history lesson. We're going to get back to the opioids and fentanyl. Stay tuned.
Once you shoot your first needle, you become feeble. Your body begins to ache and deteriorate. If you don't seek help fast, your inner voice will wheedle you into doing worse than that.
And we're back. I have to say, those were appropriate, messages that we had there, huh?
Yeah.
And that young boy, by the way, I was at Tech today, who made that's self-made in the studio. I mean, that's really good stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
I want to go to, you were commenting on the first
Get the Let Out show, which was Friday night at Lynn City Hall, completely sold out, 2,200 plus seats, and at $40 a ticket. You can't do better anywhere for entertainment now. You can come in to a show at $40 a person. Beers and wine are like $5, soft drinks are $2. Or you can go downtown to one of the restaurants that we were just talking
Yeah,
about.
we'll get back to that. That's a good point. Yeah.
And so for less than $100, you can go out on a date with your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever.
Significant other.
Significant other, and really enjoy yourself. That's, I believe, the 9th time in the last 9 years that Get the Let Out has come here. They're a Led Zeppelin cover band, and they don't claim to try to act like Led Zeppelin. They have 6 or 7 unbelievable musicians, but they've been sold out every single time they come.
I take it you were there Friday night.
I was there Friday night, and I see different faces every time they come, and people from all over Massachusetts, all over New England, actually.
Pretty
come to
much
see it.
our crowd, though, right? Our age.
It's our age group, but the funny thing is that, my son, who's 25 years old,
Yeah.
is there with his friends. And there are
They don't want
couples
to talk
there.
to you, though. Here,
They
go,
were sitting
Joe.
with me. I mean, it's,
But the thing is that Led Zeppelin is the type of
Yeah.
music that transcends generations.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing what's happening. That's the good news. By the way, before we move back to the opioid crisis, there was no council meeting this Tuesday, or there was?
No, it's every other. This Tuesday was a off night.
So next week, folks, Council President will be letting you know what transpired. You
Yep.
give them an update and then give them a preview.
Yep.
Okay. I want to go back quickly to the opioid situation because, Paul, you made a great point. Who's producing the fentanyl?
The Chinese.
Exactly. People don't realize that.
Right.
Is it being regulated, Paul?
Not at all.
Keep going.
And it's not, and there's very little effort to keep it from coming across our borders.
And it's not coming directly to us, is it?
Right. Remember, through Mexico, like you said.
Yeah.
But this is the point I've raised this on a number of fronts in the past. You always have to follow the money in these things. You think about that beautiful poppy seed plant,
Yeah.
right? That's in Afghanistan, right?
Exactly. Good thinking.
We have thousands of troops over there. Do you think that we could stop the flow of those poppies and its byproducts out of Afghanistan and into this country? No, I think in some way we're helping it because it's follow the money. There's money to be made, and people are looking the other way. People are getting bought off. Things are happening to get that product into our country. That's one thing. And the same thing can be said about the Chinese thing and Mexico. And you can say, well, we shouldn't have a wall so that it destroys our natural beauty or whatever their argument is. How about just to keep the drugs out? And then they'll say, oh, but then you can't stop it completely. That's okay. Just knock it down a bit, I'm not interested in ending it because I know you can't end it. But if we can reduce it substantially, why wouldn't we? Anyway, sorry.
I have to say that makes some sense, but you get Pine in here. You served on a council with him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's going on now is what we were talking about earlier about the Vietnam War with
Yeah.
marijuana. Marijuana wasn't that popular in this country, but after the Vietnam War, because when everybody was over there,
I hate to interrupt you, but we have a caller, and they're more important than you.
then go ahead.
Caller, let's put it up there so we can respond. That's the ANP wants to know who's distributing fentanyl and what are we doing to stop it. Folks?
So we answered China, and I would say that there must be something going on with the DEA, but it's certainly not enough to stop it because, by the way, the fentanyl is the drug that's actually killing the kids. It's not the heroin.
Heroin
But
is
something, it's not
fundamentally
only
harmless.
killing the kids, though. It's killing the first responders as well.
Really?
Because they're touching it or smelling it, and
I hadn't realized that.
it's
secondary.
It's secondary. It's
Great point.
fentanyl, and it just gets stronger and stronger and cheaper and cheaper.
Right.
That's right. Let's get to that because a kilo of heroin, I understand, is about 50, 60 grand.
Yep.
And I believe a kilo of fentanyl is like 12,500. Right. But yet it has the same street value.
So here's the dynamics. Think about this. Somebody who, up until this point, has no involvement with painkillers, right? They have a little bit of surgery. They get a prescription for Percocet, right? Percodan, Percocet, whatever it is. They get a script of 30, good for 2 refills, so they get a 90-day supply. They take it for 3 days, pain is gone. If they're smart, or if they're paying attention to this stuff, they pour the rest down the toilet or dispose of it some way, whatever you're supposed to do, the right way to do it, and then you don't refill it. Now, the reality, though, is you take those 27 that you didn't use.
Yeah.
You can sell them. I don't know what the
Or
market,
save
the
them.
street market. They could be like $10 or $15 a piece.
Yeah.
So now you've got 87 of those that you can sell at $10 or $15 a piece, and if people are willing to pay $10 or $15 a piece for those, think about now somebody gets all 87 of them, gets addicted to them, and then they don't have the money to buy anymore, and then they start going to cheaper alternatives. That's where heroin comes in, and then the cheaper alternative to that is fentanyl.
That's very descriptive, but here's the thing. That's not killing them. Fentanyl is. The synthetic is the killer.
I get it.
And it's unregulated, just like you said. And the question was, is there anything you can do about it? You said we have to deal with China. That means that Donald Trump and his State Department better interact with the Chinese, correct?
Right.
They can worry about Korea, North Korea, but this is a big issue affecting us directly.
Right.
But it's not just affecting America, it's affecting the whole world.
That's correct.
It should be a United Nations issue. It should be on the,
They're never on our side.
they're not on anybody's side if they're not doing anything
No,
about
they
it.
are, and that's the problem.
And,
Right.
and many times you hear that especially the countries of the United Nations that don't like the United States, they blame us for the demand. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And that's part of the conversation for sure.
But for all that you talked about, it's a move in the right direction. It's insane for those people who oppose. We may have a shutdown this week, Paul, tomorrow, right? We'll talk about it at the end of the show because we've got a graphic on it. And it's all predicated because there are folks who are resisting building the wall because they want a pure DACA deal or whatever they're talking about, of which everybody wants to do something about DACA, but they're saying, we'll deal with you if you give us the money for the wall, if you allow us not to have chain migration, if you
eliminate the lottery system.
Right. By the way, that would help us in the city of Lynn because this chain migration is killing our school system. Can you speak to that at all? I mean, there's a lot of truth to that.
There's some truth to it. Yeah.
Okay. Some.
I don't know if the wall will really help like everybody thinks it will.
It's a metaphor.
There's definitely an issue in America with we're allowing all these people to come in here,
Yeah.
but we don't have the support system to take care of them. There's not enough jobs or places to educate them. They're coming into cities like Lynn, old
And
cities.
the Health and Human Services has limited budgets, and they're already strapped as it is.
Is that a call for us, or I don't want to, is that, no. I'm sorry. But you worked diligently. You worked your tail off. You put up your reputation to build the Thurgood Marshall Middle School specifically because we had such an impact, so many extra students in the city.
Right.
Okay? And no one can ever accuse you of not being sympathetic to immigration, so to speak, right?
Right.
For whatever source.
Yep. And I really truly believe we need 2 new schools.
I know you do.
We have to deal with what we have going on in the city with the population of students that we have. Unfortunately, what happens is we keep getting kids coming into our city from other countries. And I can't even use Puerto Rico as an example because they're part
They're
of our
American
country.
citizens.
But we got like 60 kids that came in this year because of what happened there with the storms. We should be helping them. But we're also taking in, I believe it was in the last few years, over 900 kids that came in from Central America.
Right.
Well, that's the point. The point is, and Paul, you spoke to this eloquently. It's not lack of empathy. It's that, okay, send the dollars. Where is our congressman? Where's our state senators and our state reps about sending the dollars?
The ones that are screaming that we need to let them all come in need to figure out a way to support them financially. And if they're going to put it all on the locals to figure it out. I mean, what happens? We have to raise our property tages
which is going to happen in April.
Right.
That's projected.
But I can say this, I had a meeting with Congressman Moulton a few days ago, and he's just as frustrated as we are about what's going on, not just here in Lynn, but in all the communities that he represents.
But he votes the wrong way every time. I don't care how frustrated he is, he votes wrong. He voted against the French. He voted against chain migration. He's up against, if Trump had the cure for cancer, we'll go the opposite way. The guy comes out with a perfect health bill, and they're trying to say he's going to drop dead of a heart attack on CNN, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and so, look, I tend to have my point of view, and it's similar to yours, Joe. But I think a lot of times there's a piece of this that from the other perspective that you always have to keep in mind. I mean, there is a moral issue here that we have to contend with on the migration question. The other side of it, and this is the part that those who will use it as use moral grounds to argue against, is that they want to take a system that is struggling financially to support what we have and keep throwing more people into the equation. Now, if there's only $1 per person and then you double the number of people, now there's only 50 cents a person, right? And if you keep pushing it down, how do you ever really be able to help anybody? So my theory is that they need to, as you used to put it, you turn off the spigot,
Right.
absorb what we have,
Right.
try to make a system that's makes a little bit more sense, and then in time maybe we can open it up back up and make it legal.
folks, what do you think of that one?
And-
Let's review it. Shut off the spigot, right? No more immigration for...
No more illegal immigration.
And you can shut down regular, or shut it
Slow
down
down
for a
the
while
immigration.
until we can absorb, right? Enforce the laws we have.
So just a statistic that people at home, most of you know about this from reading it in the newspaper. We have about 6.6 million people in the state, and 1.8 of them are on mass health. That's more than 25%.
Oh, yeah.
$16 billion
almost a third.
we spend on health care. And there isn't another nickel to be had anywhere.
I agree. We have a caller. Hi, caller. Let's put it up. Comment. If the senators and the congressmen are against the wall, they must be, what was that?
For the opioids, since they come from Mexico.
That's a good point.
That's
what
the
Ben
same
says.
kind of point I made, yeah.
But it is a good point. You don't quite agree with that, but obviously any obstruction, if you put a wall in front of your house, I mean, if you take a look at Obama's estate down in Washington, D.C.,
put
there's
a
a wall
wall.
there that you can't believe.
Hey, so over 50 years ago, LBJ had the war on drugs, or was it Nixon? I don't know who it was, but somebody said they were going to have a war on drugs.
Reagan.
And 50 years later, we're still having a war on drugs, and we're getting our butts kicked. Why?
Very simple.
Because instead of
Because
trying
it's all
to
about the
take
money.
care of the person that's using the drugs, we were going after the drug dealers. And anybody that was caught with it, but no matter, I'll use this as if you were caught with a joint, you were given 10 years in jail. And if you were caught with 10 pounds of pot, you were given 10 years in jail.
That was maybe a long time ago. That's
But what I'm
nothing like
saying,
that now, right?
it didn't help the problem. and they were putting people in jail, overburdening our...
but
But
Dan,
how come I don't smoke anymore?
Right.
How
gave it
come
up.
Paul doesn't drink anymore? How come a lot of people, I'm sick and tired of coddling people if they have I understand it because I've had my own addictions. But this is getting ridiculous. It's not sentencing. It's society permitting it to happen.
And I got to say that while I will agree with, parts of that, the fact of the matter is that, our sentencing laws were screwed up. I don't think there's the resolve on the part of federal government to really stop the drug. Legal or illegal, money pays the bills. And that's what's going on. Whether it's the pharmaceutical companies, funding the campaigns of people to get them to keep let them do the way they want to do it, or if it's Wall Street, or if it's the health care industry. And maybe it's also the illegal drug market, where they're doing their thing behind the scenes. You don't know where it's happening, but it's happening. I know it is, and that's the bigger problem. The problem is corruption.
We have to take a quick break. We'll talk about corruption. We'll be back. Stay tuned. We're looking for your calls, so make them.
$49 million Americans struggle to put food on the table. More than 1 in 5 children are at risk of hunger. Among African Americans and Latinos, it's 1 in 3.
40% of food is thrown out in the U.S. every year, or about $165 billion worth. All of this uneaten food could feed 25 million Americans. If you or someone you know is struggling with hunger, please visit My Brother's Table at 98 Willow Street.
You have the power to make this decision to quit smoking. It took me to get to a mature age where I understood that if I didn't stop, I was going to put myself in the same position that my mother was in. And I wanted to make a choice while I still had the chance to be here for my daughter.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
Let's get right to that caller. Caller, let's get it up there. Only way to stop the opioid crisis is to treat dealers like terrorists and send them to Gitmo. Tim, what about that? Sounds harsh, but it works.
Because that's what they were doing, as Paul was saying back when they started the drug wars, is they were treating everybody, every dealer the same. I agree that all of these big-time dealers, they should be treated as murderers, to be honest
I think
with
so.
you.
Anybody who sells heroin or fentanyl should be accused of attempted murder just for selling
Right.
it.
And that's where you got to get our senators and our congressmen and our lawmakers to take a look at it. And anybody dies as a result of drugs that you've sold to somebody, you should go to jail for that, for murder.
Question.
Not just
Go ahead.
being a
Actually, I
dealer.
think that anybody who sells it, anybody who is caught selling it, is attempting murder because we know how significant it is, and they
Right.
should be tried on that basis. That will slow down those interested in getting into that as a side business.
How about this? How about President of the United States who doesn't smoke or drugs, never did them, as opposed to 3 presidents preceding him that did?
Admittedly.
Admittedly,
Well,
right.
he says he never inhaled,
You don't
right?
think that that's important? You don't think it's important that when someone says, I did not and did? There's also a tone, and they can criticize this guy here that's there now and everything, but society has a role. Look at what's happened in Hollywood. Look at the degeneration that's been going on for years. It's been accepted. That's the problem. Society's got to step up and say, we're not going to tolerate this, Paul. That's where you begin. Right. And the wall is a sign of intolerance. Intolerance is not a bad thing. That's all. And you're right, guys. If someone is selling drugs that you're talking about, fentanyl in particular, well, they're aiding and abetting murder.
all they have to do is go on the internet and take 2 minutes to figure out that selling fentanyl could easily lead to the death of the person who uses it, easily. So I don't think you even need to change the laws. I think you could argue that anybody who sells fentanyl for the use and knowing what it's going to be used for is committing some degree of attempted murder.
Let me ask you this, because you brought up the point about guns, when we talked about the murder rate earlier. We have laws on the books that if a person uses and the commission of a crime has a gun, that they jack the penalty up significantly. That has been abated. That has evaporated, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, it seems like the sentences are a lot lighter, but, and it's not that Massachusetts has probably the strongest gun laws anywhere in the country.
Where?
Massachusetts.
Go ahead.
It's up there, yeah.
California maybe might have
They say
little
Illinois is
stronger
the
laws.
worst, but yeah.
But, well, it's extremely tough to carry a gun.
Right.
And anybody that shoots, 90% of the murders that are committed with those guns are usually by someone who doesn't have a permit to carry a gun.
Right.
So they're criminals right off the
Right.
bat.
If guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns.
And that's right.
Washington, D.C. and Chicago are testimony of that. And so is in Baltimore. By the way, the #1 boom boom city, actually, a surprise, is St. Louis.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the point is that I hear all of these sociological reasons for crime and mayhem and drug use. And I'm saying, you said earlier, it transcends economic grouping, drugs and drug addiction.
Well, it has over
Of
time.
course it has.
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, we glorify it.
Right.
Our motion pictures industry glorified it. All the things you were talking about. Television glorified it. The internet is brutal. The language on the internet is unbelievable. What people say about people, you're right, Paul, and so aren't you. What people say on the internet, on Twitter, again, about other people is unbelievable.
Right.
Right. And they would never say it if they were looking you right in
Of
the
course
eye.
not.
Right, yeah.
And these are folks who consider themselves sophisticated and educated. That's the part that gets you.
Right.
And it's craft. You and I, you were talking earlier about if there was a beef between anybody, you duked out and that was the end of it. Now, it gets a little different.
Right.
No, that's absolutely right.
And if society, talk about education. How about the schools enforcing behavioral problems, doing something? But they don't. They brush them aside.
Right.
They can't because people
get
are afraid of
sued.
the ACLU.
Right.
Yep.
You got to tell the ACLU to take a hike. You got to deal with reason, and you got to do a common sense, which is completely lost.
Right.
So Darren went to the same high school as I. Do you remember Al Malagriffa? Of course you do.
I
right?
love him. Al.
Right.
Yeah.
T. O'Connor.
He was
Barbados.
my JV basketball coach when I was there. And when I would make a mistake on the court, in practice or in games, he would smack me on the side of the head. He admits today that if he was doing what he did back then to me today, he'd be in jail.
No question. And by the way,
And
before we go to jail, I have to take a break.
And just so you know, I didn't turn out half bad. I mean,
We'll be
I
right
have a
back.
little ringing in my ear, but other than that, I'm fine.
We have a caller when we come back, by the way. Or do we have a caller?
Welcome to LCTV. where we have a variety of member and staff-produced programs airing every day. You can find both our public and government access schedules online at lyntv.org.
And we're back with this exciting edition of Frankly Speaking. Do we have a caller, producer? I'm not quite sure. We do. And it says, for you, Councilor Cyr, you read it and you answer it.
What are your thoughts on developing GE property before the Westland storage issue is resolved?
That's a great point.
Well, I believe it has already been resolved because we are going to be doing a project.
You're talking about building...
The water and sewer separation, I believe
That's
that's what
gonna
they're
happen.
talking
So is Tim
about.
referring to the individual sites that the Housing Authority just bought? Is that what he's talking
I
about?
think we should refer to what we talked about last week. Remember that building all of these different houses from the land that was taken by purchase from the General Electric
Right, that's
is going to
parking lots.
impact, obviously.
It could impact, right.
It could, but the project will probably be
The separation?
began
We're going to add another
before-
sewer system, another vehicle for accepting sewage times however many units they put in,
Yep.
and that increases the burden on the system.
Yep. And it's not going to add to the burden at all.
More
How do we
people,
know?
more poop.
Right, but it's the real reason you have flooding in that area is the same reason we had it in East Lyme, is it's
Nature.
below
It's Mother
sea
Nature.
level.
It's actually-
And
actually
this
Mother-
will help somewhat.
Yep.
It's not going to take away the flooding. What they should have done, to be perfectly honest with you,
Is what?
was to buy all the land, eminent domain, tear all the houses down, build the land up, and then turn around and
That was your idea.
Exactly.
Well,
But
I mean,
nobody
that's what
listens
they
to me,
should have
folks.
done, but,
Yeah.
and I get it, people don't want to give up where they live, I understand that, and I gotta say this, Peter Capano, the council who's over there, has been, since he's been a council the last 14 years, has fought and fought and fought about the flooding that's gone on over there. Finally, they're at the stages where they've got a design, they're getting ready to put the design together so they can start the project. You should see that
But-
begin in the next year or so.
But there's no guarantee that the project's going to work. That's the whole point.
No,
You're
but what
spending
the-
$150 million.
But we're also being forced to do that.
Yeah, I always hear that, mandated by the state and the federal government. You know,
Exactly.
I don't buy into that.
They gave
I'm
us a
sick-
waiver
Yeah.
with a wink and a nod for like 12
Yeah,
years.
of course. And they went and solicited. Oh, we don't want the waiver. In order to do it. You have to think about this. 150 million.
106.
100 what?
106.
Excuse me, I'm off by 44. I remember when Thurgood Marshall Middle School, I thought was 20% of 90 million at 18 million. It turned out to be about 40 or 50 because of this, that, and the other. I want to talk about the Commons, talking about things.
Yep.
How come I go down to the Commons to go to Market Basket to visit my dear friend Paul Crowley for a $3.99 tuna melt,
Yep.
and I see piles of like ant piles there, and all kinds of construction. I have no clue what's happening. Do you?
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
Community Development got a grant
Yeah.
to go in there and fix up the commons.
Basically revitalize it.
Revitalize it,
Yeah.
exactly.
If you looked, so at the other end, down by the library, they
Yeah.
did that over the summer. It's got an all new walkway, so for the
Right.
walkers and the joggers, it's nice and flat now. And they changed the wrought iron fences, and they put up some new trees, and they did a lot of nice work.
Lighting.
I
They-
agree with
They
that.
redid the bandstand a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And, they're doing it in phases, and now they're doing the heel.
And it's all being done with federal and state money, not city money. So none of your
makes you
tax
happy.
none of your tax dollars are being, city tax dollars.
Yeah.
State and federal tax dollars are being used.
So see, Darren and I come from the same school of thought. A tax is a tax is a tax,
Right.
so it's important to differentiate.
But here's the point. This is why I'm so happy to have you on to Triumvirate. We have a Triumvirate now. Is that you can let these folks know about it. I mean, I think I'm pretty up to date on stuff. I had no clue what was happening down there.
Right.
And these folks should know. It's not just an ant pile there.
Yep.
And you're right. That down by the library looks terrific.
Yep.
And if we can go back to the GE for a second.
Go ahead.
The Housing Authority, Peter Capano, Jay Walsh, Tom McGee, Dan Cahill, Brendan Crichton have all been working with the GE, and the GE has changed its way of doing things and its attitude towards the city.
Which opened up the opportunity for the market basket, and now all these other things are starting to fall into place.
And our relationship with the GE is a lot better than what it was before, and that's partly because of the union as well, the GE union. So we're going to be developing that whole neighborhood over there, working. I believe there's going to be 14 or 15 houses, single-family homes that will be built, which will bring tax revenues into the market rate tax revenues into the city, and it's going to also start to change those neighborhoods down there. Right now, what you have is, I believe it's 4 or 5 parking lots that are not taken care of, that are overgrown every year, that bring more blight into the neighborhood.
Well, fundamentally, the General Electric gave you it as a steal for $500,000 for their land. That's number one.
So can I add a couple of points?
Yeah.
One is because last week, I think you were concerned that it wasn't going to generate tax revenues. Darren has now confirmed that it will actually generate tax dollars.
Right.
And the other thing is, I believe that the Housing Authority will make these homes available to first-time home buyers.
Hold on.
And let me give you one example,
go
though,
ahead.
about these type of houses. Right up in my neighborhood, the Housing Authority built 4 single-family homes.
Okay.
Each one of those homes, $430,000, 2 of them, and the other 2 went for $450,000.
Which generates tax dollars. Okay.
But what my
I
point is that it is market rate homes that they're doing.
But the Lynn Housing Authority is now out of the business once they're built and sold. They're just a vehicle.
That's it.
Okay.
It's a development arm.
But let me make a point to you about the tax revenue coming in from, how many houses? 14, 15, you say?
Yeah.
Okay. $106 million is being spent on the other side.
But it's
Okay.
not because of those 14 homes. The
No,
problem
the
is
reason why
already
they
there.
can spend $106 million to Lynn Water Sewer Commission, because they jack up the rates, the water rates. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, so it's a tax by any other means.
Right.
So
And
it's
the
a
federal
shell game.
The federal government has told us that we have to
Yeah,
do
I'm
this
sure
water and sewer separation, which we did back in the 90s, if you remember, in East
But
Lynn.
only for the
Wait a minute.
swells in East
Wait a
Lynn.
minute. Hold it, folks. If you think this current administration in Washington, D.C. is going to hold the city of Lynn's feet to the fire to do it, you're out of your minds.
It's a Massachusetts DEP.
Right, and they have come in.
So it isn't the federal government then, it's the Massachusetts guys, right?
It's
Go
both.
see Charlie Baker.
It's both. But
Well, do you think
they've
the-
also come in and they've told us we have to do this project. If we don't do it, they're going to begin fining us.
Did they lower
like
the
$100,000 a year?
Did they lower the expectations on the percentage of admissions? Because remember back when Pat McManus first negotiated with this,
Right.
they had to reach 0 discharge, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be allowed
I
to have
believe
some.
they are, but the thing was,
Stop in the name of a caller.
okay.
Caller, you take precedent. Go ahead. Do you think methadone clinics actually increase the use of drugs overall? Good question, Randy. Guys?
Honestly, I'm not an expert.
If you include methadone in the computation of the users, the number of users, I would say that it helps to maintain it. I don't think it increases it. Interesting problem with the method. It's kind of a challenge in this way. So when you put somebody on methadone, you're basically giving them a dose every day.
Yeah.
And ostensibly, they won't need to steal to get their heroin fixes and all that kind of stuff, so they become less of a burden on society in that sense. However, I happen to know somebody who was on methadone for 15 years and wouldn't get off of it. So, and he was lethargic. He never really got clean, if you know what I mean. And so he just was kind of a zombie, and that's not good either. So I would say that it has some benefits. It's kind of like the needle exchange program. I'd much rather somebody use a clean needle than a dirty needle, but I'd rather them not use a needle at all. You know, it's that same kind of thing.
So I think his question was, does methadone, is that just a substitute for maintaining an addiction? That's all it's saying.
And from Paul's explanation,
And
it is.
basically you're saying it is.
It is. And
That's not good.
The broad social impact is, I think, a net positive. The individual impact on the individual is, that if they stay on that methadone, they're not going to be productive or develop any confidence or be able to get out of the funk that they're in, at least in my view. I mean, maybe some people do, but most people don't.
Okay, Paul, we got to get to our answers, and then we got to do our comments. So I'm going to ask you. I want you to throw it up there. I want you to tell me what the 4 capitals named after presidents, 4 state capitals.
I don't know. I know one, Lincoln, Nebraska.
That's one. What do you say?
Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison, Wisconsin. That's a tricky one. That's 2. Think Missouri. Third president of the United States. Third president. Show them up, will you? Jefferson City.
Jefferson City was
Okay,
one.
now let's go to Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
Old Hickory.
Oh, yeah. Jackson.
So that's 4. You get that?
Right.
What? You got this right, by the way, pre-show. I'm not going to allow you to answer it. Paul, well, you ask him the question.
I'll know it as soon as I heard it, but I
What was the
I'll
capital?
Yeah, which city was the capital of the Confederate States back during the Civil War?
He's an
Atlanta.
accountant, not a historian. Tell him, Darren, you know.
It was in Virginia. And I
The
can't,
capital of Virginia, which
Well,
is...
that was my first thought.
Well, that's good. Should have got it out there. Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond.
This one's a great one, Paul, and we got to get it quickly. This is the largest, population-wise, the largest capital city in the United States, against capital cities. But in its own state, it's not the largest in population.
Albany. Albany?
Texas.
Albany's got a lot of people, huh?
No, it's the reverse, right?
We're in the reverse.
Albany's the capital of New York,
Yeah.
but New
I
York
thought the
has
same
more
thing,
people.
but it's,
This is not the question. The question is this state capital has more people than any other state capital. In other words, Boston, Atlanta are pretty big state capitals. This one has more people than those state capitals, but is the smallest, Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas, folks. Caller, get up there. We got a caller. That's Randy
We've
again.
already seen that question, yeah.
Let's get the new one. Do we have a new one? 1 second. Okay. We're waiting for... Well, let's...
live TV.
Okay. That is live TV, and you know, things are working out pretty good, my friend.
Yeah.
Paul, we got a couple... Oh, there it is. And this is named after you, Paul. And you do it. What is happening?
Okay, so what is happening with the former Thurgood Marshall School? Is it going to be turned into anything? And I will tell you that the leading proponent of putting that out to the private sector to develop it is Council President Darren Cyr. At least one group actually came to talk to me today, in fact, because they're talking about how they
But what
might
was
be
the
able to
question?
incorporate a community room in there.
I don't understand the question.
What's the
Well,
status of the school? What's it going to be used for?
What are they going to do with Marshall, the old Marshall Middle School?
Oh, the old one. Okay.
Right.
Here's, we got the
And-
right guy here.
Yeah, we put it out. We put a bid package together, an RFP, put it out, and we did get. There's 4 or 5 people who have responded already to it, and we're looking for at least $4 million. We want to turn it into a senior.
Like an over 55 kind of thing?
Over 55 type of living where there's going to be 120 units. We've had neighborhood meetings. It's not going to be, it's going to be another tax revenue that we'll be able to bring into the city.
$11 million, $50 million total project?
Oh, it could be more, depending on what they do.
You're going to
They're all
condominiumize it? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
apartments. And they're talking, there's one group that's talking about making part of it somewhat senior assisted living, as well as possibility of maybe bringing a senior center there and some other things.
Right.
Well, you'll keep us posted on this because we got to move on. We'll be posted. We only got a few minutes left. I want to get to comments quickly and one other thing. So, Ralph Briggs says, nice job, guys. I always like hearing that. And I thank you for that, Ralph. But I want to move down to this one from Malcolm Mitchell, which is a terrific, he says a lot of stuff, and I don't know if we can get it all, Malcolm, but we'd like to have you as a guest on the show, so along with us. if you could. You know, sometime, Paul, sometimes you can't make it. You know, you busy with helping out the senior citizens nationally go to Washington, which he does, folks. And Malcolm and you, he loved your father, would bring him on, the three of us. So Malcolm, if you'd like to fill in when Paul's out of town, we'd love to have you. He said something about the General Electric. Can you get it, Paul, there?
Yeah, so he's basically saying that don't be afraid of the General Electric, but you can't trust the company, which I'm trying to decipher what that actually means.
Wait a minute, let me get to it, because we talked about this and it came to me. He's
worked there
thinking
for
about
37
converting
years.
Lynn, the attitude in Lynn, to a bedroom community as opposed to a manufacturing community.
Yes.
Is that basically it?
Right.
So speak to that, Council President.
Okay, and I say this all the time, the future industry of the city of Lynn is the Lynn way. And the reason I say it that way is because of the billions of dollars worth of development that can take place over the next 50 years down there, the amount of jobs that it's going to create. And a lot of it would become apartments.
So it's not manufacturing?
Not manufacturing.
Residential?
Residential in the sense that, like the GE property, you're talking about 2,200 units going there. Beacon Chevrolet, 350 units going there.
His baby, he loves that.
Yeah, a lot of commercial space is going to be happening on the first floors, meaning like restaurants, clubs, stores, storefronts, things like that along there. So it's going to continue to create jobs even after it's completed. But seriously, if you look at the amount of development, you're talking billions and billions of dollars over the next 50 to 75 years.
Let me hold you. I'm a big fan of Tom McGee's concept called infrastructure connectivity, in which he's talking about rapid transit into downtown Boston, which would do exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
You, Paul, and you talked about the looping. Remember that looping thing?
From Route 1, yeah.
And if that happens, we're going to drive a lot of folks into City of Lynn as a bedroom community for Boston. Agreed?
Yeah.
Well, you know, and we say this all the time about Lynn, but it holds true for Nahant, Swampscott, and Marblehead. We're really tucked in the corner, you know, and there really is only one way out, you know. Although some people would argue we can use the boat too, although you couldn't get it. It's just not you can't get enough volume on a ferry or whatever, although it would be nice to have.
Very quickly.
Yes.
Throw up the graphic quickly, because we only got about 45 seconds. Will there be a shutdown or not? What do you say, Paul? Government shutdown. Will that happen? Good idea, bad idea?
It will get shut down, and the Democrats will still try to find a way to blame the
What do
Republicans.
you say?
No, I don't think it'll happen.
You don't think it's going to be shut down?
No.
I'm going to go right up the middle. I'm going to be non-committal. No, I'm hoping it gets shut down if they're in transit, you know, because we need to shake things up. On that note, folks, hope you enjoyed our show. We'll be back with the Council President and the ever Executive Director of GLIS, Paul Crowley, and yours truly, Joseph S. Have a great week.